criminal defense and trial attorney Gary Gerstenfield and trial attorney Nicholas Fourtuna, who joins us now in studio. So, Nick, I'll throw that question to you. Sure. that I was trying to get down to answer. What's the impact of Giuliani joining the legal team?
It's incredibly important for Trump because he had a hard time getting quality counsel to join his team. And really, Giuliani has been out of practice for a while, but what he was able to do is draw in veteran prosecutors to join the team, two from Florida that he used to work with. So I think that's very important for Trump because he needed people, he needed horsepower on his team. So Giuliani was able to bring that. And Giuliani basically said he'll be the PR man for this situation. I doubt his goal of negotiating some sort of quick resolution to this is really realistic. But what I do think, he helped Trump in a lot of ways by bringing on good lawyers.
Gary, what about it? Is Giuliani the right man for the job here, or is he perhaps too colored by the fact that he is such a staunch Trump supporter?
Well, I agree with my colleague in the part about Giuliani. Without question, he is a talented and veteran lawyer and a gifted litigator. There's no question about that. The concern I think that you're raising is that, well, for the last 2 years, Mr. Giuliani has been pretty much a political advocate and acting as a surrogate for the Trump campaign. The problem here is that the role of an attorney requires a different set of optics. Lawyers should not represent family and friends. That's always been sort of an underlying premise. And here you have a person who has been so much a part of the Trump campaign that perhaps his objectivity will be impaired. Political considerations can sometimes override legal restraint.
Nick, let's move on to this DNC lawsuit. Is there some kind of legal precedence for this?
Yes, there is. Interesting. At least the claims against Russia are similar to the claims that were brought against Nixon. The issue here, the main issue here with the claims against Russia are the Foreign Sovereign Immunity Act. Do the claims fall within that exception? And there is precedent to bring those claims against Russia.
But do you expect Russia to send it as a representative to show up in court? Do you expect WikiLeaks to take this seriously? Or is this not more of a publicity stunt ahead of the midterms?
Well, the leverage they have is that if the judge decides that the case can go forward and it does fall within one of the exceptions, and at least some of the claims fall squarely within the exceptions to the Sovereign Immunity Act, then the assets that these defendants have in the country are subject to levy. So if they fail to respond, it could be a default judgment, so there is leverage over them. The judge would have the power to force them.
Well, Gary, what do you make of it? Are the Democrats just grasping at straws here?
Well, yeah, I think there's a fair statement for that. It's going to be very difficult to actually mount any kind of a lawsuit against a sovereign country, Russia. And after all, Mueller's report is not even in yet. There's been no evidence that we've seen so far that shows conclusively there's been any collusion, much less a conspiracy, which is what really would be required to make any kind of a case involving the Trump campaign. So in order to make the elements of the case, I think that the Democrats are going to have to be able to show that they have some premise of a case beyond merely making an allegation, which has been part of their political mantra going into this entire matter.
Gary, do you think that the Democrats are going this lawsuit route now because they get a sense that the Mueller investigation isn't going to come up with the results that they want?
You know, that's a fair question, and I think a lot of people are going to be saying that, particularly the Trump people. They've been saying all along there's been no collusion. They've been saying all along that this is a witch hunt. And so far, the only thing that Mr. Mueller, his team, has been able to come up with is that there's been some lying to federal officials. There's been some corruption and some fraudulent dealings that was done by Mike Flynn and by Manafort. But in terms of actual, meat of the subject, which is actual collusion, there hasn't been any real showing of that up to now.
All right, Nick, James Comey's memos seeing the light of day, well, at least most of them, without the parts have been redacted. What do you think they'll serve? Do you see them as a key piece of evidence against the president?
I don't see it as a key piece of evidence, but what I do see that it's very important to establish James Comey's credibility. He wrote these memos contemporaneously with the events that occurred, reporting on the meetings. That's what a lawyer typically does, is record everything that happens to make sure they have it accurately. Trump is going around calling Comey a liar and saying he can't be trusted and he should be prosecuted. I think the memo supports his prior testimony and supports his credibility. As far as being direct evidence of criminality on behalf of the Trump or the Trump campaign, it's not there in the memos, but it does have the implications that.
But Nick, it's still a subjective account. Comey is writing those memos as he saw them. It's still subjective. He was still perhaps writing them with an agenda. Why should this carry more weight than the president's word?
That's the argument some people are making, but the way the law looks at it, you get the presumption that they're accurate and truthful because they're made at or around the time the events occurred, and also before there's a motive to lie. There was no motive at the time. There was no agenda for him to assert. He was just looking to make sure that because he thought the meetings were unusual, that there was an accurate
Assuming
reporting.
They weren't backdated, and Gary, can we establish that these memos weren't backdated, and do you think that Comey's word should be valued higher than the president's?
Well, I don't think it's a question of whose word we should believe more, but as far as backdating these memos, no, I don't think there's evidence of that, and I think I'd be very surprised personally to see that. However, when you're writing a memo, particularly where you're meeting with the president and now you're coming back and you're writing down what happened, you're writing it from your own perspective and your own, again, I'm using the word optics, and your optics are going to show that you didn't commit any wrongdoing. What's interesting about the memos is that there's nothing in there specifically talking about collusion or any of the things that that really sparked the Mueller investigation. And of course, Trump has harped on that to great effect. So as far as that is concerned, that part of the memo, I think, is actually, or those part of the memos have been helpful to Trump.
All right. We're going to have to leave it there. Gary Gerstenfield, Nicholas Fourtuna, thank you both very much.
Thank you.